Art Tatum stands as one of the most technically astonishing pianists in jazz history, and much of his language can be traced directly to the classical virtuoso tradition. As a young musician, Tatum frequently performed works by Franz Liszt, pieces like La Campanella and the Hungarian Rhapsody. Number 2. From these works, he absorbed rapid repeated notes, large arpeggiated leaps, and an almost superhuman independence between the hands. Rather than simply copying classical technique, Tatum transformed it. He created what many call the illusion of speed, not by playing faster than everyone else, but by filling every beat with hyper-dense arpeggios and chromatic passing tones. His left hand maintained a stride rhythm, while the right hand unleashed streams of notes reminiscent of a romantic era. Piano Concerto. A perfect example is his recording of Tiger Rag. In this performance, you can hear Liszt's showmanship reframed through a jazz vocabulary. The right hand flashes across the keyboard with dazzling runs, while the left hand keeps the rhythmic engine moving. Layers pile on top of each other until the piano becomes almost orchestral. Tatum didn't just play classical music, he re-encoded it into one of the most advanced harmonic and technical languages jazz has ever seen. In the following discussion, we will trace the classical imprints within Art Tatum's jazz performance style by examining for works Liszt's La Campanella, Chopin's Revolutionary Tude, Rimsky-Korsakov's Flight of the Bumblebee, and Liszt's Hungarian Rhapsody No. 2. In this audio clip, we can hear Tatum extensively performing virtuoso pieces from Liszt's early year. He was particularly influenced by romantic piano technique, wide-ranging arpeggios, glissando, and rapid repetitions. He created an illusion of speed using densely packed arpeggios. His playing often features multi-layered textures, right-hand virtuosos and left-hand stride working in parallel. The ray harmonization in his technique is also evident. Chromatic progressions and frequent modulations. His right-hand flow resembles Lisztian virtuosity, while the left hand maintains stride, clearly presenting a jazz rewriting of romantic technique. Through Art Tatum's music, I've come to understand that classical and jazz music are related through inheritance and development, and that classical music influences are still present in later musical expressions. Therefore, in my jazz studies, I should occasionally return to classical music to examine those details that I might have overlooked, but which are invaluable in the development of music. Fats Waller's stride piano didn't start in a jazz club, it started in a church. As a young organist, he played Baroque music, especially Bach, Buxtehude, and even parts of Mendelssohn's organ works. These composers shaped his sense of counterpoint, voice independence, and that big organ wall of sound. In jazz, this becomes unmistakable. A leaping left-hand stride bass, a right hand moving like a separate melodic voice, and chords stacked thick like organ pipes. You can hear it in Handful of Keys, where the left hand feels like an organ pedal line, or in African Ripples, where he develops short motives just like a Baroque invention. Waller's genius comes from this fusion, Bach's discipline and Buxtehude's organ power blended with Harlem swing. When you listen to Fats Waller play Ain't Misbehavin', you're not just hearing stride piano, you're hearing the echo of the great Baroque organists he grew up studying. Waller often created what we might call an organ-like fullness on the piano. His chords are big and dense, stacked with multiple color tones, almost like he's simulating the multi-rank sonorities of a pipe organ. In the left hand, those wide, driving octave patterns function like an organ's pedal line, steady, powerful, and anchoring the entire texture. Meanwhile, the right hand keeps adding ornaments, passing tones, and inner voice motion, building a layered sound that recalls the polyphonic writing of Buxtehude and Bach. This is where Waller's classical background resurfaces, a multi-layered ensemble texture, recreated by a single pianist. And in Ain't Misbehavin', you can hear it clearly, the left hand laying down a firm pedal foundation, the right hand continuously embellishing the melody, until the entire piano blooms into a full wall of sound, as if a jazz organist and a Baroque composer briefly met inside the same performance. Bill Evans stands at a unique crossroads in piano. His story bridges between the great classical tradition and the modern language of jazz harmony. His influences were unmistakably classical. Debussy and Ravel shaped his sense of color and harmonic openness. Chopin taught him the art of inner voice movement, and the Russian school from Rachmaninoff to his own early teachers gave him a philosophy of touch-weight depth and a singing tone. In jazz, these influences transformed into something entirely new. Evans built a quartal and quintal harmonic system, using stacked fourths and fifths to create a floating modern sound. His lines often move with Chopin-like inner voices, subtle shifts inside the harmony that guides the ear as much as the melody itself. For Evans, tone color becomes syntax, a core principle that defines his phrasing. And in his trio, he pioneered a truly chamber music approach, dissolving the hierarchy between piano, bass, and drums. You can hear all of this distilled in piece. The meditative left-hand ostinato, the drifting inner voices, the translucent fourth-built harmonies, and the distinctly Russian touch all merges into one of the most influential harmonic models in modern times, jazz. Back in the 1950s, Monk's house was full of black musicians. They were always there, jamming, improvising, living and breathing jazz. Bill Evans didn't dare join them. He wasn't famous, he didn't have the reputation, and in that era, white musicians didn't just walk into black jam sessions. Bill wanted to learn Monk's chord changes. He had no right to ask Bud Powell, the great pianist. So he went to Barry Harris instead. Barry lived in Monk's apartment, basically camping in the living room. He could have ignored Bill, like most black musicians would have in that time, but he let him in. Bill sat down at the piano, ready to ask his questions. But instead of playing Monk, he started playing In Your Own Sweet Way, a tune by Dave Brubeck, a white pianist. Barry immediately kicked him out, and it wasn't personal. In that period, during the civil rights movement, black musicians were under constant pressure. They were fighting for recognition, respect, and basic rights. Jazz was their culture, and a white kid playing someone else's music in that space looked disrespectful. Bill learned from that experience. He went on to become one of the greatest jazz pianists. But that moment at Monk's house was a clear lesson. In that world, respect for the people and the culture came first. And what can we, as later generations, take from this story? It's simple: talent alone isn't enough. Respect, humility, and understanding the culture and history you step into are just as important, sometimes even more. Bill Evans had the skill to play anything, but in that moment, he hadn't yet learned to honor the people and the traditions around him. Being allowed into a space doesn't mean you own it. Learning often comes with boundaries, with rejection, with moments that feel uncomfortable or even embarrassing. And that's okay, those moments are what teach us. So, if there's one thing to remember, approach others' work and culture with curiosity, yes, but also with respect. Humility opens doors, understanding opens hearts. And that, ultimately, is how we grow, not just as musicians, but as people.